Good evening. It is Thursday evening, the 13th day of June. It is time for Mek We Chat. Right here, every Thursday evening, we come together to chat with you, as I like to call it in the rum shop style shopping. No rum here tonight, bro. None of these, most of these people can't survive it anyway. So,
oh, please. Oh, please.
I'm Jerry George.
Speak for yourself.
Not your turn to speak. I'm Jerry George. It's my privilege to welcome you to another edition of Mek We Chat. The usual suspects are here. Over there in London is Catherine Edwards. In New York is Margaret Francis. Sitting quietly by Beverley Sinclair. And at the controls, as usual, George Randa. I'm Jerry George. Take it away, Bev. You have to unmute first, though. You have to unmute.
All right, here I am, unmuted. Margaret, what kind of thing that the man talking about?
You understand?
Still to me and Margaret.
He got some
business.
nerve.
All right.
To say who could drink and who could drink, you know?
Still to me and
Just the
Margaret.
smell of it
business.
will knock him out.
Well, you say I should stay out of him and Margaret business.
That's
so
right, stay out.
I'm going to stay out of your Margaret business,
Stay
but
out.
I will have my comments on whatever I feel like commenting on.
Okay, well, that's different.
This is Mek We Chat, and we have plenty of things to talk about this evening. Plenty of things. Oh boy, we have that situation in Trinidad and Tobago with the Venezuelan immigrants. That's on the menu. And we want to talk about the Petrocaribe uprising in Haiti. And we want to talk about this big celebration going on in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Is there? Is there?
I think they're going to be celebrating for the rest of the year. They have a flying chair that just going all over the place. I think they're going to be celebrating for the rest of the year. So, we are going to look at those.
Please do not degrade our thing. It's a throne. Oh, sorry, a chair.
It's a throne. Okay, it's a flying throne. It's a mobile throne. Right, so we're going to look at St. Vincent and the Grenadines accession to the UN Security Council, the Venezuelan immigration situation in Trinidad and Tobago, and we want to look at the Petrocaribe uprising in Haiti. If we get through those before 10 o'clock, then we have Clico, BAICO, we have fees for Spicemas on the menu as well that we will get to.
Pincy mask and we put spice mask, you know. Hope you know that. You have to keep these things in check.
I have news about Spicemas. I don't know.
We have that. Okay, all right. Okay.
Maybe Spicemas will send out news releases.
I know, right? I know.
I too busy playing master, not time to write news release. So that is where we is. So let us kick off suspect in chief. Let us kick off with the St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
George?
Yeah, could I just get a little penny halfpenny in here?
Sure.
Yeah. You know, I got big eyes and I noticed a lot of things. And tonight I couldn't help but notice that there seems to be a trend on Friday mornings when we have Brian Pitt join us for Good Day Grenada. You see Mr. Pitt wearing coordinated shirts, usually blue, with coordinated headphones, usually blue. And I mean, unless I'm terribly colorblind here tonight, I'm seeing coordinated blouse and
Margaret and I are coordinated, yes. That is why I told all the stuff of business.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you guys are coordinated. Catherine is coordinated. Look at her. Look at her pink with a pink curtain in the back there.
No, it's not. It's not pink.
What is
looked
it?
Pink to you. It looked pink to you, but it's not. I think it's maroon or something like that.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, it looked pink to you, but it's not. It's maroon. It's not pink.
Well,
the curtain you mean?
close
The
enough.
curtain.
Close
It's not
enough.
pink.
No, the curtain is
That's
blue.
not-
That's correct.
And that's
Yeah.
cream. That's I think cream, not pink.
The one that actually caught my attention was the lady in blue on the right side of the screen there, because she seems to be.
Out of step, out of line.
Well, no, she seems. Isn't that a blue chair, a
Chair,
blue leather chair in the
exactly.
back there?
No, it's black.
I think it's my camera that just makes everything look blue.
Blue chair.
My chair is black.
Well, geez,
I'm
guys.
wearing
What?
George
navy
is
blue and green.
Margaret?
George is seeing
They can't
different.
mistake us, right? Okay,
No,
good.
no, they can't. No, there's a blue reflection on the chair. So it's
White
coming
balance.
up as blue.
We are the white balance.
Yeah.
Right. I probably
Here
need
comes
to
Atty.
balance my camera.
What a
Here
letdown.
Here comes Atty.
What a
Yes,
letdown.
welcome.
But there was a
Atty.
cigar. Is a cigar Atty in his mouth there?
I
was
don't know.
wondering.
I saw something moving from left to right, and I was wondering
Just
whether.
a camera, yes,
Mr. Martin, would you put your face in the center of the frame, please, sir?
so that there's no behavior, people can behave themselves.
Atty, give us a little more of your head.
Is he hearing us? Atty, you hearing?
Yeah.
Just on that though.
He heard that one.
You need more of your head. Bring it up.
There's not much left.
RT, seriously, try and get your face in the center of the
Yeah,
frame.
you gotta change the camera. Tilt down the
I
camera.
could have asked a different question, but since we're already on the air,
Yeah. Yep.
well, I
That's
won't.
good.
No, that's more like it.
There we go, that's better.
By the way, guys, let's also say good evening to Donna Joseph, who's online with us, and she's saying good night to you guys. And Arthur Langine says good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, from the big time Mr. Pope Langine from New York.
I know him.
You know him?
Remember him? Yes. Yes, I do remember Mr. Pope. Hello, Mr. Pope. Great to have you with us.
Well, I know Mr. Langine joins us every weekday morning on Good Day Grenada. Mr. Martin, you look very pensive tonight. What's up?
Exactly that. I'm very pensive.
Dare I ask why?
Yes, you can.
Will you be told?
There's a lot on the plate, but I think actually what we need is a platter. And you may have to consider extending and expanding the hours on this program because events are unfolding at such a rapid rate. Before we get time to talk about them, they may come to yeah.
Go ahead.
It's just so I'm just kind of it was very difficult for me to send a selected, prioritized list of issues because they all appear to be priorities, and I'm sure you all are beginning to feel some of that same kind of trepidation, and it is a matter of trepidation. But in addition to that, there are a lot of local things happening in terms of my incitement trial and Lennox Linton's incitement trial, and there's a lot of court activity and stuff happening here that kind of is attempting to distract us from the more substantial issues, but nonetheless have to be paid attention to because, yeah, they're real and we have to find a way to deal with them.
And especially with court matters. you just
Yeah,
can't-
I will quickly bring you guys up to date. It won't do justice to the situation, but at least you'll have some information.
All right, so we look forward to
Okay,
that.
so want to leave at it with later, Bevo?
The UN Security Council thing.
No,
No,
Ati.
Ati's.
When we take Ati?
Yeah,
Ready.
I was gonna bring us up to date and stuff.
Yeah, let Ati go ahead because I think what Ati has to say is much more up to date than anything else we could say. So Ati, go ahead, shoot.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, essentially, we've actually come up with a phrase to describe what's happening is that we're now confronted by a group of assassins of democracy in our country and in our region, and that includes politicians, senior civil servants, judges, magistrates, attorneys, and others of various kind of colors and ilks. Essentially, yesterday, Lennox Linton, 2 days ago, Lennox Linton and the Edison James and Dr. Thompson Fontaine were required to appear in court. Lennox was the only one here, so he was the only one who appeared. And this was to begin the hearing. This is not the trial yet. The hearing, which accuses the leadership of the United Workers' Party, opposition party, of inciting the people of Roseau to riot. After they had held a meeting in town and the meeting had been shut down, everybody went home, and then later on the young people went berserk and actually did some substantial looting and damage to businesses and stores in the city. And the government laid the blame for that at the doorstep of the opposition party. That happened about a year ago.
Just over a year ago.
Yeah. So that the police say they have 75 witnesses in support of the charge of incitement. It turns out that, frankly, a lot of these witnesses actually were not even there and whatnot. But that aside, the defense attorneys submitted that they would like the witnesses to be made available because they plan to cross-examine every single one of them, even in this stage of the proceedings. And they gave them the order in which they would like the 75 witnesses presented. Turns out that the prosecution came to the court yesterday and was entirely unprepared, and they were seeking to just present a random list of names, etc., etc. So the judge, actually, the magistrate, threw it out and told them to come back next Tuesday with the requested list of witnesses in the order that they requested. Be aware that the attorneys, that the Director of Prosecution's office has handed this case over to a senior counsel from Trinidad and Tobago, who comes to the tune of millions. So the state is paying a substantial amount of money to proceed with and prosecute this matter. Be aware also that the magistrate ordered that no media and no member of the public will be allowed in his court while the hearing is going on. And be aware also that the entire court complex was again surrounded by fully armed and ready for tear gas and bullets and whatnot, people dressed in camouflage uniforms. So,
Wow.
that is the circumstance. These are the terms of engagement. This is not really about incitement or trials or justice. This is really about intimidation, about weaponizing, the security forces, weaponizing the court system, and weaponizing, the system of justice, the possibilities for justice. People have remained calm, and although there was a turnout of people to observe from behind the barriers, the court actually sat for maybe about 35 minutes and then adjourned till next Tuesday. In my case, as you're aware, on December 15th, at a meeting convened by the Concerned Citizens Movement, we were tear gassed. Right after I finished speaking, the group was tear gassed. We were told that I was inciting, and so I am the one who's charged. Although there were several hundred people there, and as of now, 6 months later, just about, the prosecution, i.e. the police, have not submitted disclosure. They haven't submitted the case, as to what are the charges. And so I was required to appear, then they adjourned. I'm required now to appear again in September. It seems very likely that the plan is to just a constant harassment and having you preoccupied with these court appearances, but with no intention to pursue it because actually there's no case really. So the consideration is being given to taking a proactive step and response. And if the legal advice that comes back supports this, we could very well be considering what would end up being a landmark case of basically we will sue the government. We will sue the state for abuse of power, for excessive use of force, and for reckless endangerment of not just myself, but all the other people who were there, etc., etc., etc. And so if they don't want to proceed, we will, because there's a case on our side for making it clear that we are not guilty of any incitement charge. Those things are happening, and the weaponization of the police continues, but it's a really interesting process. Almost about half, equally, of the existing enlisted men in the police force can be seen to be or sensed to be, if you will, sympathetic to the opposition forces, not the opposition party, but be sensitive to and sympathetic to the movement for electoral reform, the movement for, equal access to the courts, fair trials, etc., an absence of harassment and so forth. So that is unfolding in parallel to the other substantive issue that has unfolded and is unfolding, is that when we were told that the opposition, that the Labour Party, the incumbent, has a budget of 70 million EC dollars for this campaign, a lot of people didn't believe. But actually, a substantial amount of millions of dollars have been spent already. And it is very, very clear to us that the $70 million figure may even be low.
But I don't understand that. I just don't get that.
Well, because really, this is a campaign like no other campaign I have been aware of. You have people going around with cash in envelopes, Jerry. And sometimes the cash is $20,000.
Yeah?
And they're handing $20,000 to an individual. How long you can continue doing that, I don't know. And, there are what we call the pink slips. The pink slips are the duty-free slips for vehicles, which are set up for servicing farmers and people in business who want, to import vehicles to help them do their business. But now hundreds of these have been pre-signed. Pre-signed by whom? By the Minister of Finance.
But don't they have a special number plate?
You have no plate. The rest of the form is blank. You fill it in.
No, the number plate that they're given isn't it, and they're given they can see that gets an F if it's if it's.
No. In our case, no. No.
That's the problem. That's the problem right there.
There's no identification of what came in duty free and what didn't.
That's the problem right there.
So now, if you begin to add that up, that is in addition to the $17 million in cash. So the revenue deferred, revenue lost to the Treasury as a result of this indiscriminate handing out of duty-free slips, pink slips, is rivaling the $70 million, because people are ordering not used cars anymore; they're bringing in
new cars.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unfolding, but it's getting to the stage now where there is a definite shift of momentum. There's a definite shift of even from within the incumbent party, and there's a nervousness. For the first time, it is reported that Roosevelt Skerritt is doing house-to-house campaigning in his constituency. For the first time in 4 years, in 4 elections. So there's every indication that we could have a change. But frankly, as I keep telling people, that's not anything you can take for granted. You still have to continue substantive work. And in the face of the evidence that we're having now of persons being shifted from constituencies, they're taking 30, 40 young people from one area and just bringing them to another constituency and registering them there in violation of the law, because it's not just registering at an address. You have to be able to show that you have been living there.
Mm-hmm.
With bills or something coming to you and mail coming to you at that particular address. But none of that is paid attention to. This is the total, crude, blatant setting aside of the laws and the constitution of the country. And it unfolds even more, when you look at the way that the contracts are being assigned. There's a St. Lucian firm called Rayneau, Rayneau, which has replaced our Public Works Department.
Oh?
They've been brought in. They have brought in equipment, heavy equipment, including trucks, pickups, backhoes, bobcats, whatever. And they are doing all the road paving and road repairs that our Public Works Department should be doing, but our Public Works Department was dismantled, set aside, and gotten rid of. So all of these jobs now are being done by St. Lucians. In addition to that, we have trucks that have come in from Trinidad and Barbados, huge trucks, over, in one case, one cluster of these trucks these are 10 tonners, 22 of them were brought in, and they are doing all the heavy hauling. And while our local people who have borrowed money from the banks to buy these same type of trucks, their vehicles are parked. So it's kind of, somebody has gone mad, and of course, this is, entering a new phase where we do expect, and I need to say this, we do expect that when it becomes clear to the incumbent that notwithstanding their vast amount of money available to them and they're spending it, meaning distributing the money, when it becomes clear to them that that is not working and not going to work, they're going to get much more deadly. And
exactly.
that's where we are.
Exactly.
And that, the rising influx of other Caribbean people into Dominica rivals the influx of Venezuelans into Trinidad and Tobago. And so we need to pay attention to those things. And that is happening while people like Ron Saunders and other assassins of democracy are basically out there trying to prove to us that the Chinese are our salvation. Trying to say to us, if it wasn't for the Chinese, we would not even be where we are today, and thank God for the Chinese. And that is Ron Saunders, who's a senior public policy analyst, ambassador, thinker, writer in the Caribbean. So you put that together with everything else that is unfolding throughout the region, and you understand that we are just the microcosm of the broader weaponization and dismantling of our attempt at democracy. We haven't even got it yet, but these guys are not about to allow it to happen. Trinidad is experiencing the same thing and going to. The rest of our islands, the smaller islands, are confronted with this growing reality, which is unless we actually find a way to do what George and Jerry and Bev and you and others have been proposing, which is to create a regional force that can campaign so that this is not a Dominica issue anymore, and it's not a Trinidad issue anymore, it's not a Haitian issue, it's a regional, it's a Caribbean issue, and act and behave as if we are truly CARICOM citizens, truly Caribbean people, helping, working, and acting on behalf of our salvation, no matter where it's occurring. Yeah. If we cannot do that, like yesterday, I'm afraid, each one of us will fight our little battles. We'll have these little exchanges where we catch up on what's going on in each other's country, but actually, they will take us out one by one.
Mm-hmm. That's the intent. That's absolutely the intent. Seriously,
I think I've said enough for now, and I'm really quite prepared. I'm anxious to be.
Just one question before you go. That question of the electoral reform,
yes,
which we saw, right? What's the state of that play?
Okay, interestingly, the status of that is Matt, actually, your colleague at QFM had the Attorney General for the first time presented himself for an interview. And actually, he got caught out in the slips, on many occasions, because it's not a defensible position that they're taking. They argue that if you actually use the list that has been used for the last 5 or 6 elections, you will get fair elections, because that same list has been giving us fair elections all along, so there's no reason that it won't give us another fair election. Anyway, this is an attorney general, a trained mind, a trained legal person.
And I wonder what yardstick he has used to measure that the elections have always been fair.
Well, interestingly, another lawyer, this one, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Francine Barron, another trained lawyer, says, well, there's no evidence, there's no case of people voting fraudulently, that is, using a dead person's name to vote. And then they got a barrage of calls of people telling them, but here's the case. Here in my community, I know people who voted 3 times. Here is his name. Here's where he voted. Da 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 da. And in the face of hard evidence, this is not just anecdotal evidence. It's never been prosecuted in a court, interestingly. But in the face of that kind of evidence coming from people calling it, she's still saying, well, there's no evidence that this has happened. Meaning, it's never been taken to court, it's never been argued, it's never been proven. That kind of stuff. But it's happened. And then the situation really is that there's no denial that the voters list is even much larger now than the resident population, because we continue to lose population, by the way. Because of the actually collapse of the economy, people are leaving. So residential population numbers are in decline. The only numbers that are on the increase are the arriving Haitians. And so we are confronted by a situation where the argument for electoral reform has been reduced in the first phase to 2 issues. ID cards, which now everybody throughout the region except us takes for granted, and a clean voters list. ID cards they argue against on the government side. Interestingly, the chairman of the Electoral Commission said he won't have time to do it. Now, the next elections are not due before May 2020. We've calculated and we've looked at the cases of the other islands, in which case which have many much larger populations, and it took you all 4 months, maybe 6 months to prepare ID cards for everybody, to fix the voters list. So we're saying, do you know when the next it appears you know when the next elections are, because we're telling you the next elections are constitutionally due in May. And you're telling us May from now, which is about 9 months, 10 months? You don't have enough time with a very small population to do cards? They actually have the equipment to do the cards, by the way. It was brought into the country and never used. It's sitting in the electoral office, unplugged. So what it is, Jerry, is that they have no argument. They have no tenable argument, no credible argument against electoral reform. But the truth is, they do know that given the shift in the political sensitivities and sympathies in the country, that in fact the numbers are going to work against them. And so they actually feel...
I see a lot of that is just active cowardice, really, just cowards. That's, yeah. I can't see it any other way.
But you see...
If you're going about saying you're so popular and you're just test it.
Yeah.
Oh, something else that here. Sorry to hold you, but I see that.
You want us to take the break and come back?
Okay, sure.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
A natural disaster can change your life in minutes. Preparation is the best protection for your family and business. Prepare now. Create a disaster plan and make sure everyone knows what to do. Store water, non-perishable food, and medication. Remember basic emergency supplies such as batteries and flashlights. Trim overhanging trees. If trees near power lines are unsafe to trim, call GRENLEC at 237 for assistance or advice. Install surge protectors to safeguard your electrical devices against outages and intermittent surges. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Right, welcome back to this edition of Mek We Chat. And we'll be getting an update from our, what should I call him, correspondent or suspect in Dominica. Which one?
Our usual suspect from Dominica.
Our usual suspect from Dominica. Atty Martin. I noticed an intervention in the papers where the Prime Minister said that he run things in Dominica.
Yeah.
And I see the stories, they're quoting what's his name again? The pollster.
Oh, Peter Wickham?
Oh, the guy from Barbados?
Peter Wickham. Why is that so important?
Well, it's important because it really sort of shocked a lot of people, and they're trying to deny. They're in denial about it. They say, no, that was just a joke. The Prime Minister himself said, oh, I was just making a joke.
Oh?
Yeah, that's what he said.
If there was not a video.
So we asked him, what else were you making a joke about? The airport? You know,
but no, what I have a problem with is that too often in these countries we allow these paid quote unquote professionals to come in and dictate what things mean. Yeah. Why is his opinion so important?
Well,
and I'm serious about that because
I'm serious too. It's because
we publish that they think. Who cares what they think? They don't live there. I really have a problem with that.
Our media needs to be able to filter these things much better than they do before giving them exposure.
Calm down.
Actually, don't say media. That's a bad word.
Yeah, I can feel it. I felt a vibration, and it wasn't a tremor. but it is true. But interestingly, Wickham is actually almost at the end of his rope in terms of credibility with Dominica, even Labour Party. Because other polls have been done that have made his work, made a nonsense and a mockery of his work. So nobody really believes anything that he really says. I won't say nobody, no significant numbers of persons do anymore. They have had to bring him in because the talking heads of the Labour Party have tried to use what Skerritt said, that, so a man can make a joke then.
No, but I really think that especially as media people, we have to stop giving too much credence to these people. I really have a problem with that.
I agree entirely.
Why is his opinion more important than all the other people in Dominica? He doesn't live there.
Yeah.
And
because
the media has been conditioned to parrot these things.
That's all that is, parroting.
Yeah.
So,
and they're lazy. The media is lazy too. Largely, most of them don't do any reading, don't do any research, and so they won't be able to say, here's what this guy said over the years. Here's the pattern of his, accuracy. So why should we even believe it?
Because they don't go to these events or read these articles to do a proper report on it.
Exactly.
They're just looking for a soundbite.
But let me tell you all something. Doing the research, doing the report could get you into trouble. Now, I understand that my name is all over the place simply because I was able to pull back an article in 2010 where the government denied that they were making a bid for the UN Security Council.
And then they come back and say they've been at it for 10 years.
For 10 years, right? So they boasted, but you see, they didn't think anybody had that
piece of information.
So now they are mad. They're absolute. In fact, I understand I'm treasonous.
Yeah, but there's a parallel with Trump and Mexico. The Mexico deal was struck many months ago, but it was now presented by Trump as being his deal that he just worked out. But some reporters do have the archives that show that this was something that was spoken about and negotiated for months before. But we're just going to have to be really brave and
we got to be tough-skinned. I mean, it just got to be tough. That's it.
And continue to do some real journalism work.
Exactly. Because once people get and they recognize that you've been right, it takes away the lance from them. It's very important to be consistent and don't fool around.
Absolutely.
Exactly so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So.
But we want to look at the situation in Trinidad after.
Yeah.
Well,
you saw that information, right?
Yes. I've been really looking at that situation because of the breakdown in the society in Venezuela. The citizens of that country are seeking refuge elsewhere. They are fleeing the country in large numbers. We have figures in the millions of people that have left the country over the last 2 to 3 years. And Trinidad is the latest receptacle for many of these people who are fleeing Venezuela. But things have taken a turn there in Trinidad. A lot of the Venezuelans crossed into the country illegally, many of them undocumented, and they're just looking for a place to go. They're looking for food and shelter for the most part. So the Prime Minister of Trinidad, seeking to take control of a situation which is spiraling out of control, decides to set up this center to have all the Venezuelans in the country go and get registered. And that is now posing some serious problems in Trinidad.
Yeah.
No, it's a terrible situation, eh?
Yeah, because Venezuelans are going there in droves.
They're meaning the Oval.
Yes, I am sure that Prime Minister Rowley did not believe there were so many Venezuelans in Trinidad. I would be willing to bet that he had no idea that he was opening a hornet's nest when he said,
but he had to know.
To come forward and be registered.
Well, he really didn't have much choice in that.
He didn't have a choice.
He didn't have much choice on that one at all. It was the only way they could get a handle. And now we see the size of the handle. Because I saw some of the crowds and it was amazing. Because just about 2 weeks ago, there was a competing number. Some said it was only 20,000, when others said it was 40,000. And there was this back and forth between the opposition and the government.
As if that is what is important.
Exactly. Now you start to see the numbers and you start to say, aha. But I want to drift towards the concerns of the Commissioner of Police. All right? Because what he said has happened is that quite a number of career criminals have come across. And there have been several deaths among their population where people seemingly to take the opportunity to kill people for whatever reason. And so his last interview, he was saying, listen, he wants them to bring a law enforcement that says, listen, once you have any data on these people, that you send them back. Because he says they're struggling to control the crime situation there, because now there's an unknown in the mix that you have no way to calculate. And listen to what he said. He said there are 300 to 300, he called them shooters. That is these paid killers that the police have their eyes on. And he basically said to them, we know who you are. 300 paid killers? Jesus Lord, that's scary.
But let's not forget that this is on top of the domestic murder rate, the domestic crime rate, the domestic homelessness, the domestic unemployment, racism, you name it. So this is not just a vacuum into which these Venezuelans have come. It's like,
but Ati, even on the question of employment, what they have come in and done is that some business people are exploiting their employees.
Of course.
Yes, absolutely.
At the expense of the Trinidadians. So Trinidadians would have probably have to be paid $200. They pay them $100. The Trinidadians does not get the work. These people so that is just a matter of time before that explodes.
The same has happened here with regards to the Haitians.
Right. But the situation is that it is escalating and some serious things are going to happen because the commissioner, when he spoke recently, he said, like within 2 days, they picked up 4 dead Venezuelans. One of them was actually killed in a shootout with the police. So they are either coming in armed or coming in and being armed and getting involved in activities that are troubling for the police at this time. And we look at the proximity of Trinidad and Venezuela to the rest of us, And since this situation began in Venezuela, of course, our very progressive prime ministers have been in denial because there's nothing wrong in Venezuela and it's all US imperialist propaganda, and all of us should stop washing the mouth on Venezuela and leave the people alone, and CARICOM has taken a stance not to interfere in Venezuela's internal affairs. Well, Venezuela's internal affairs have spilled over her borders and have now infiltrated all the countries that surround Venezuela. And I am sure, as I am sure today is Thursday, that Grenada, which is just a few miles from Trinidad, St. Vincent, these Grenadine Islands, which are so porous, all the way up the chain, Venezuelans are going to be making their way to these islands. And they are not prepared. Trinidad was not prepared. And it is a situation which is, it's a powder keg. And the islands are not prepared.
What the Commissioner of Police is happening, and I could see this happening so easily, is that the gangs are there. Listen, criminals know criminals. So when these people come in, they're using the Venezuelans who are unknown to help to commit the crimes. So the ones at home are keeping their powder dry and putting these guys out front. Now, what is so well, I shouldn't say laughable, but Prime Minister Gonzalez was against intervention in Venezuela because he said if there was intervention, we'd have these 13 million firearms, licensed and unlicensed, unleashed throughout the region. Well, there has been no intervention, and what has happened? We have the same problem. So, but nobody has said anything about that.
But let us also not forget that the main portal for the movement of drugs from South America is no longer across the Mexican border. It's through Venezuela.
Oh, it's exactly.
And the main group in charge of that is the military. And one of the last remaining groups standing up to its full height is the military. They are one of the last institutions that will disappear. And they are the ones who now understand the opportunity for distribution that getting into these islands presents. Not just Trinidad, it's Grenada, this St. Vincent, this St. Lucia, all the way up. And it opens up Europe and so on. So, and I don't believe they're going to be able to put the lid back on that box.
Well, I don't. You see, if they start to do something about it, for them it's going to be an admission that their stance failed. So they're keeping quiet. But all the time they keep quiet, it is the people of this region, these islands, who are going to one day wake up and realize, wait, there's a Trojan horse.
Is there any reason why Venezuelans are not flooding into Guyana? What's your sense of that? Why not Guyana, which is on the same landmass, just a walk away, a bridge away, a river away? Why not Guyana,
Because
especially now?
there's a known resentment because of the whole situation with Venezuela trying to take Guyanese territory. There's one. But two, don't forget that Guyana is, at this stage, is not as, how must I put it? Goods and services and stuff are not as easy as Trinidad. Now, Venezuela is, sorry, Guyana is actually growing in that regard. But right now it isn't.
Okay.
It isn't.
I think that there was in the border towns. There have been some migration.
Yeah.
I can't remember how much. And I do know that Guyana was trying to set up put some structures in place to deal with it. But I haven't really followed it to see, because so much of the focus was on Colombia and now Trinidad as opposed to Guyana. But there was some influx there.
Yeah.
Where they went to mostly, Margaret, is to like the mining towns. They went to the gold mining areas. That is where they went.
Because they come in kind of like in the border areas.
Exactly.
And then there have always been like skirmishes there between them.
That's the point.
Even prior to this situation, you've always had little back and forth between these people. So.
The experience of Belize vis-a-vis Guatemala would be instructive here because, I mean, thousands of Guatemalans escaping unrest in their own country and poverty just walked across the border into Belize and actually have integrated, have become part of Belize's hinterland population.
Yeah, they have. So that is another border which is fairly open, fairly porous, and people just move across it.
But don't forget that Belize and Guatemala have this case that is, they have
there's that ongoing,
there's that ongoing thing there too. And I suspect there are people who don't necessarily want that settled because it leaves the borders porous. Sometimes we might say what we like here, but there are people who don't want those things settled.
Question is, do we actually have borders in the Caribbean? Can we say that we have borders?
Good question.
Very good question. But
I remember when I turned up in Grenada and they asked me, what you doing here? No, I'm serious. I mean, sometimes it gets annoying.
Yeah, we pretend, but really, Americans can still come into our country on their driver's license. Is that a border?
Yeah,
no, that's just broader.
Americans can come here with their driving license, but we can't travel around the region with our driving license.
Not even.
But isn't that because we allow it?
Yeah.
Of course.
That's my point. That's the point. So you have selective borders depending on who, as opposed to
Yeah. Okay. For CARICOM nationals, we build a wall. For everybody else, we build a wall.
Yeah.
But this situation with Venezuela, guys, we need to start putting our voices out there and saying our 2 cents about what our islands need to do when the Venezuelans start coming in. We already know that we have, certainly in Grenada and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you have a section of the leadership of the country that still pretend as if there's nothing wrong in Venezuela. You still pretend that the people of Venezuela are not facing a crisis situation and looking for asylum elsewhere. The reality is they are going to turn up on the shores, and they have been turning up on shores looking for food, for shelter, for medicine, for jobs, looking for refuge. Now, the approach that Trinidad has taken obviously has its challenges. Since our islands are not yet at that crisis point, what would be the best approach? What should be put in place now so that when the first boatload turn up, there is already something on the ground to deal with them, because there is no if, it's when.
Trust me, some of the boatloads have arrived, but they have not arrived together as boatloads. I could tell you that, for example, like on Union Island and stuff. I've heard some stories. Okay,
I know that there are.
we need to register them too. I think we need to do the same registration. Put something in place for the same registration.
You know, there's an embassy in Grenada. I don't know if the embassy has been receiving its nationals when they get here. I don't even know if the nationals know that there is an embassy that they can seek out. They just don't know what is happening on the ground. And every time you raise that issue about Venezuela, people back get stiff and they get stupid. And instead of dealing with the reality, they start to talk stupidness about American imperialism and sanctions and things that really don't matter one way or the other to what is happening, what is actually happening now.
The thing that bothers me, though, is that, it is these kinds of incidents that reveal the stark nakedness of our maturity as countries and as a region. Because, okay, it's borders, it's migration, it's the potential social and economic and security impact. Do we have the laws in place to actually allow us to take the action, not just singularly, but regionally on these things? Do we have even the institutional capacity? Do we have a regional security force? We have an RSS that has been used to do what? Have they been trained to assist in securing the borders of an island archipelago? Or have they been trained to stand at the ready to come in and intervene when one leader or the other asks for help?
RSS is a drug enforcement agency, but it is a U.S. drug enforcement agency.
Yeah.
Well, they helped out in St. Kitts in terms of when they had a crime outbreak about 2-3 months ago. They went to St. Kitts and seemed to put a clamp on things. But you have to also remember the RSS is more of an army rules than police rules.
That's my point.
Exactly.
And our constitutions don't give us armies.
Exactly.
So these are illegal groups. These are like Boko Haram. These are like illegal fighter groups.
Because I expected in St. Kitts, I expected a little bit more pushback from the opposition and the society, but people just accepted it and it seemed to have worked.
But people in the opposition are often constrained, Jerry, I believe, by the fact that, boy, when I get into office, I'm going to need these same boys, so let me not push back too much. And let's get real.
No, I agree with you. I am not contesting that at all.
And then it's just like with the intervention in Grenada for the revolution, people at large feel like they want some help. So when the RSS comes in, nobody asks a question. They're happy to see somebody come to help. So nobody's going to question it until maybe something outrageous happens, and then people start to ask questions and the red flags are going to be waving. But be that as it may, legislation is one area where this border crisis with Venezuela should be fought, because you are quite right at it. And I wouldn't even look at any regional legislation at this time, because when CARICOM does something quickly, it's done in 10 years. You see? So I would look at countries going into their parliaments and swiftly enacting laws that will empower the necessary police officers or whoever is going to be on the front line to deal with the Venezuelans when they come in.
But here's what bothers me. I agree with that, logically thinking and sensibly thinking, yes. But here's a reality we must juxtapose with that logic. The reality is, like, as per here, who are some of the persons most guilty of, let's say, if you will, ferreting out passports and selling them? Police officers. What I see is a huge opportunity for some unscrupulous persons in the immigration departments of our region to go and sell passports to Venezuelans.
That is what's happening in Antigua. The situation in Antigua right now that we still haven't heard the bottom out.
Exactly. So, and what are the implications of hundreds of thousands of new, quote unquote, citizens suddenly coming to your doorsteps with a CARICOM passport?
And they can't even speak English.
No. You know, your facility in the language is not a requirement for citizenship.
Exactly.
In our situation. It is in the United States.
In the US it is.
Yeah, but it's not in our situation.
But we can't ask for it because we're so indebted to these people already. There's no way we could ask for any special nothing. And my concern is that when they come, we just have to open the doors, and there's a certain sense of what must I call it there? Moral law that will take over there.
It sounds like our experiment with regionalism and democracy have not worked, and any sensible scientist in a laboratory where the experiment hasn't worked documents it, extracts lessons, learns, know what errors were made, and moves on to something else. Is it time to move on to something else? And what is that something else?
Time to move on. We need to create something. It's something like the cell phone. You know, nobody knew they needed a cell phone till the cell phone was invented. So we need to invent our own cell phone governance in the region. And I can see it, you know. I can see, but at the moment we are held in the grips of partisan, divisional politics, which feeds corruption. And those who control the system have no interest in changing the system. And the mindless followers, the yard boys who surround them, are also there protecting a system which is not working.
Correction, Bev. Yard boys and yard girls.
No, Beverly, she doesn't like that part at all. She said all of us yard boys.
Okay.
We've had that argument.
I'll remember that. I'll remember that.
Yes, yard boy-ism.
Which reminds me, I hope you guys are following the Women's World Cup and are drawing very important lessons from the Jamaica experience in that. Hopefully we could come back to that if there's time.
And Jamaican girls just to see.
Beverly,
what happened to them?
Beverly, you know what happened with, do you know Jamaica got into the Women's World Cup? The Football Federation of Jamaica pulled away all money for women's football in Jamaica. So women's football was dying until a daughter of Bob Marley appeared 2 years ago and said, we'll do this. And she financed the training for 2 years of the young women who now comprise that team. And she financed them right through to the World Cup.
Wow.
Not the government, not the private sector, but Bob Marley's daughter.
I still call her private sector.
From the Marley Foundation.
I still call her private sector.
And she did the same thing with the netball team as well.
That's correct.
Really?
Yeah. As much as the netball team is number 3 in the world, they can't get money to go anywhere and do anything.
That's right.
You know, so she stepped in.
I just find those situations absolutely.
Why?
I can't understand them.
But more than half of our population is women. More than half of the Caribbean, and why does it? Why are we not accepting that?
I don't think it's so much. I wouldn't even be sure that it is necessarily a woman's thing. I just see.
But
that,
it is.
Well, it might be.
Well, I just give you the answer. It's a man's world.
Yeah.
And
it is, Jerry.
especially,
It doesn't mind how you start to frame it, Jerry. It's a man's
just
world.
a man's world.
I'm not questioning that part, but the whole question of why we take stuff.
Remember that historically, sport is the man in this case, meaning male arena.
Thank you.
Right. So women are just beginning to earn a place in sport, whether it be football, whether it be golf, whether it be swimming, whether even the marathon. It's just in the second half of the 19th, 20th century that women were allowed to run in marathons. So sport has been a male arena for centuries. So even now, the mentality has not shifted yet.
Nope.
So women play sport as well, and they should be financed and given the recognition and everything that is given to the men. And it's probably gonna take another 100 years before women get there in sport.
So Bev, look at what happened to Serena Williams.
Exactly.
Serena Williams broke a racket, pointed a finger at an umpire and called him thief. Thief! Thief! And they fined her $82,000. You know how many
remember John McEnroe?
Oh gosh, yes.
You know how many male tennis players have had tantrums that make that look like a
John McEnroe, that look like a joke. John
I was
McEnroe.
about to call Roger Federer name.
Well,
I think McEnroe
nobody could beat McEnroe. Absolutely nobody. He used to go right in the face of the umpires and all.
I mean, and curse them out. I mean,
yeah, man.
Every F-bomb you could think of, McEnroe threw it out there.
Exactly so. So it's
and Serena got fined $82,000.
For the simple reason that she was born female.
She's a black woman.
No other reason.
Female and black.
So from a Caribbean standpoint.
Plus, add to that, Margaret, that she's black.
Yeah.
You know, and how dare this black woman come and dominate the white people's sport?
And the irony of it is that she and her sister has quietly argued and won better payment for the women's players.
Exactly.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's the one thing that a lot of people don't know. That
Yeah.
women tennis players are now being compensated far better than they were before the Williams sisters, and it's because of the Williams sisters.
Because of them being able to stand up.
Particularly Venus, she has led a lot of those negotiations to get better payments for them.
Right.
But if when we
it's not on our menu this evening, folks. So let's take a break and come back.
sorry.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company. Tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Boyo, they gonna fly with kite now. The wind picking up. I'm coming. Karim, what you doing? Fly my kite. Yeah, but not here. You can't fly kite near power lines, boy. Why not? The wind good. Because mommy say, kite threads conduct electricity. Yeah, kite. He's right. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, it can cause power outages, or even worse, it can get shocked. Come, let's go and fly them in the pasture. Yeah, that makes sense. Kite threads conduct electricity. Do not fly kites near overhead power lines. This can lead to electric shocks and power outages. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, do not try to retrieve it. Release it and call GRENADAB. Always fly kites in open areas. Keep your kites far away from roads. And remember, always clean up after yourself.
GRENADAB, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
All right, usual suspects, we are back.
Huh? What was that?
I said, all right, usual suspects, we are back.
Thank you, George.
Yes, George, always give us that little prompt, you know? George, we don't have anybody talking to us on social media today.
Yes, there are people talking, but you guys have been so engaged.
Well, no, normally when we come back, we give you the chance to tell us what they've been saying. So here's your turn.
Yeah, the thing is, remember there's a 30-second delay between the time you guys say something and it's seen on social media. And so sometimes the comments just seem irrelevant when you go to read them. Anyhow, Gem FM, the sheriff says the Venezuelan situation is well planned out by the Economic Hitman Organization. They are the largest organization set up outside of the governments of the world, but use the government and their armies to take down governments that are unwilling to toe the line of their covetousness. John Bruno says Trump is admitting that Venezuela oil is better in the hands of American businesses. Haven't they robbed the people enough? Martin Felix says, regardless of whether Venezuela is invaded or not, you guys are acting like there is no precedence for what is happening in Venezuela. Think Chile and how the U.S. now admits that they were responsible for the economic destabilization of that country, leading up to the murder of Allende and the subsequent installments of Pinochet for decades. Then it was called Operation Make the Economy Scream, as per Henry Kissinger. Can I have a piece of your apple? Can I have a bite of your apple?
Anytime.
Yeah, all right.
It's around 5.
You see, that is exactly the kind of response we alluded to earlier when we say instead of dealing with the situation of the people flooding out of Venezuela, you have those purists and progressives who focus on U.S. imperialism and what the U.S. say and what the U.S. do, as if that is going to stop the guns firing when the Venezuelan gang members bring their legal and illegal arms and come to our countries and knock heads with our criminals who are already here, involved in all kinds of nefarious activities. And instead of focusing on and dealing with the issues, we waste energy talking about U.S. imperialism and what the U.S. did to Chile and what the U.S. did to that and what they did to that, and things that really not going to help us at our borders or help us within the country. Like what is happening in Trinidad now. What is happening in Trinidad now, whether it was U.S. imperialism or not, what difference does it make? You have thousands of Venezuelans down there who are causing a problem in the country. And we have to put systems in place to deal with it when it gets to the other islands, gets to the other territories that are not yet affected in a big way. Because the thousands of Venezuelans in Trinidad didn't get here overnight and they didn't get here at the same time. And it's just the same way they could be creeping into other countries. And eventually you wake up one morning and find 100,000 Venezuelans at your door. And like St. Vincent and Grenada, that is doubling your population in a very, very quick time. You think about all the pressure that puts on the country. But yet still the purists and the progressives can only focus on imperialism and US oppression as if that is what is the issue. And that's the kind of nonsense that gets us nowhere and solves no problem.
The problem I have with that whole approach right now is Russia has been in the heart of what has been happening in Venezuela. Nobody mentions Russia going in and annexing
Crimea.
It's the same thing.
You know?
It's the same thing. But nobody mentions that.
And you don't even have to go so far. Russia lands its warplanes in Venezuela and pledges its full support to the regime. And nobody has anything to say about that. But you know, we all want to talk about
I don't.
Put on your government boots and go and take on the US. Keep them out of the region, militarily and otherwise, if you think you can.
Margaret?
You know...
hold on.
Hold on, RT. I want to hear what Margaret had to say.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead.
No, Margaret. I want to hear what you were going to say.
No, I was going... I guess I was pretty much going to say that we can't deny that, granted that there's a situation and we have to deal with the situation now, but context is also important for why that situation has developed, right? And we have to recognize the role that the US has played in the region and contributed to the situation in Venezuela as well. And
I take that.
So we have.
My question
context is always important. Nobody is saying that you don't have to. We have an issue now. Yes, we have to deal with that issue with the influx of people into islands that are small, with small populations, and worse yet, with terrible economies that can't even sustain their current populations, far less to deal with an incoming population. So we have to deal with that. But there's nothing wrong with setting context.
I totally agree with you. And that is why I'm saying the people who set the context applaud Russia for going into Venezuela and have nothing to say that Russia annexed Crimea. In fact, they just slide past it like it's nothing happened. They're the same things, the same wrong. They're the same wrong.
No, Jerry, but I don't know that. I think it would be wrong to say that people don't condemn the Russian action in Crimea as well.
In all of this discussion, Margaret, have you heard one single soul mention Crimea? In the weeks we've had discussion over this situation, have you heard one single soul, especially progressives, mention Russia and Crimea?
I don't think, because I don't think that anybody, at least the people that I know, I can't speak for everybody, I can only speak for the people that I know. I think we tend to focus on what's directly affecting us here. And in a sense, granted, the argument about Crimea and Russia is a valid one. I think it's less likely to be of interest to us here simply because of the distance. Venezuela is kind of like immediate. Venezuela is immediate. It is in our space. It's in your face. You can't run from it. It's affecting you
America
in
is
many
made
ways.
out to be the worst. But Russia can come in, land her plane, do the same thing in Crimea. Not a soul mentions it. That is wrong. And Russia is seen as a victor, a knight in shining armor coming to think. I have a problem with that. Okay?
I don't know.
I don't support. Let me make it straight.
I haven't heard anybody say that. I haven't heard anybody. Personally, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard it. No,
that's my point.
But I don't want to say that they haven't. I just say that simply because you haven't heard something doesn't mean that somebody hasn't said something. So you can't make that generalization. Okay, they haven't said anything.
For weeks, this has been going on. I followed a lot of this crap, because I've been looking for it. Not a single one of the voices who support Russia going into Venezuela has mentioned that Russia has annexed Crimea overnight. Pop. Nobody mentions that. But all of a sudden, get me right. Okay, hold on. Get me right. Hold a second to me. Get me right. I don't believe all of American actions, I don't support some of it. But I am not going to say America is all wrong. But you get this Russian influence that coming in that comes in as a knight in shining armor to deliver Venezuela when they do the same thing to one of their countries next door. I ain't doing it. Call all of them wrong. Go ahead, Ati.
Or call all of them right.
Well, something.
And that's what Ron Saunders did in his article. He called Russia and China right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. Ron Saunders is not a left-wing, rabid, progressive thinking person, but he actually has managed to be able to turn a blind eye to a large part of the realities of Russian and Chinese behavior globally, and saying to us, forget all of that. If these two guys were not available to us, we would be worse off. That's what he's saying. But here's what bothers me about the way the Caribbean approaches these things, like issues like Venezuela, issues like Nicaragua, like Cuba. We have been living in this region. We've been in this region for decades, for centuries. So we are aware of gunboat diplomacy. We are aware of the Alliance for Progress. We are aware of the Monroe Doctrine. We are aware that these are the things that have most affected us in our region. And the people you are referring to, Jerry, more than any other group of persons, know the history and the details of the effect of these interventions on the Caribbean. And they are managing to lock all of that, or much of that, out and focus on not even Venezuela's interests. They are focused on their personal and institutional and organizational interests.
Absolutely.
That's what's different. That's
Absolutely.
what the guys wanted was to be nice to Venezuela no matter what Chavez or Maduro is doing, because you wanted that Petrocaribe money, because that was a trough of money, and they knew. In fact, if they allowed the situation in Venezuela to deteriorate to the point where it collapsed, which it has, guess what? The debt would disappear. So they would have had a free hundreds of millions of dollars to do whatever they wanted with, which is what has happened.
Look at Haiti.
This is not
Look at Haiti.
Politics. This is greed politics. Let's not give these people who lead us any benefit of the doubt about whether or not they understood the geopolitics of Russia, China, the United States, and the Caribbean. That was of no interest to them. The only thing of interest, whether it be Haiti, Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, or whatever, was, are we, now that we've got our hands on these dollars, how do we make sure that we don't have to pay them back, and let's disappear these dollars? That, I think, is the harsh reality. In other words, we used the suffering of the people of Venezuela. Our leadership, the Ron Saunders of the region, used the suffering of the people of Venezuela to camouflage and shield and hide away the fact that they finally got their hands on hundreds of millions of US dollars. Free money. And it wasn't going into development.
And I think that's the part of that thing that bothers me, is that the Petrocaribe dollars was really intended to benefit the people of the region.
That's right.
And the people of the region have not benefited from it. And that is the part of that whole thing that bothers me.
But you see, no, Margaret was going to say, sorry, when we see what is happening in Haiti, at least there's an audit being done in Haiti to find where the money is. And the audit is showing up some stuff that is not very pretty. In these islands, who going to audit where the money went to?
Well,
first of all, it seems in Haiti the monies went into the consolidated fund. That is why the Auditor General could go and look at it. In these islands, they have put the money in special accounts.
Yeah. So
when asked, listen to me.
No authority.
None. When the Petrocaribe was being introduced, We were told, oh, it's going to give better, cheaper electricity and all the rest of it. A couple of months ago, when the Prime Minister was asked the direct question in a press conference, did the Petrocaribe deal give us cheaper electricity? Without batting an eyebrow, he said no. And I simply exploded with laughter. Because I remember how we were sold that this thing was going to give us cheap electricity and how this and how that. And when he was asked a couple of months ago, when the whole thing fell apart, he said no. So my question is, what benefit did it really bring? What? Because it was supposed to be an energy benefit, you know. We never had it.
So can you
It benefited political parties and political campaigns and postal pockets, but it never benefited people. Go ahead, Ati.
If 1% of those Venezuelans who are now moving into Trinidad and eventually the region understood what we just talked about, what do you think? What do you think they would do?
Just come.
They come to get their money.
Yes. Just come. Because we heard them.
And the story. You see, when you give, you know, a bunch of greedy, ne'er-do-well, nincompoops the right to make decisions on behalf of people who have genuine needs, that's what you get. That's what you get. You know? You have a LIAT that a few $1 million they need. Petrocaribe had hundreds of millions of dollars. Where is it? We could have bought a 747 just like St. Vincent. We could have bought 5.
I not here. I left. I left. I'm not here.
I mean, you could have bought a ghost plane.
We could have bought a ghost plane.
No, but at
Oh, not ghost. It's Bev. And here's the language, the aviation language. It's a stealth plane. It's visible.
I have said I left there, not here. All of those I was saying, all this conversation went on. Okay?
Yes. You see, so anytime you touch on Venezuela, we know that the Venezuela situation is always a complex, very complex and very
complex.
But the immediate need is for all our islands to prepare to deal with those Venezuelans that are fleeing the country and seeking refuge elsewhere. That is the real thing right now. That has a myriad of problems right now. Trinidad is facing it, and the rest of us are going to be facing it very soon. We don't need to wait until it gets here. We need to put systems in place now so that we can start dealing with the Venezuelans that are already in our shores and those that are no doubt on their way.
My biggest concern, quite frankly, is for the Grenadine Islands. That is where I kind of have a nightmare on this issue. Because they are so porous.
Yeah.
They have so much space. People could have just moved into a particular space and just say, right, man, stop and right here.
All hell is going to break loose. You know? So
there's some good news. There's some good news, people. The good news is that it doesn't look like this is going to be a very active hurricane season. So
that's I saw that.
We have Hurricane Venezuela, Hurricane Maduro, instead of the regular, suspects. So, but Bev, it doesn't take anything away from your point. We better get ready. We need a disaster preparedness plan to deal with Hurricane Maduro.
Exactly. Precisely so. So we have other things on our menu, and we're dying to get to the UN Security Council.
Well, let's go there.
Yes. Now, the CARICOM Secretariat was swift in sending out congratulations to St. Vincent and the Grenadines on achieving this historic feat, because it is historic.
No question about that.
No question about it. It's a big thing. Or when you talk about the Caribbean and Latin America being represented anywhere. Generally, if it's not a country from the English-speaking Caribbean, we don't feel it. We don't become a part of it. So for St. Vincent to find its way, and it's the finding its way part that we'll get to in a little bit. For St. Vincent to find its way to get a seat on the UN Security Council, it's a big achievement, and they have to be applauded for gaining that seat and projecting the English-speaking Caribbean onto the UN Security Council stage. For the man in the street, it probably doesn't mean much, and it will not, because it's not something that you're going to see benefits from at your doorstep. It's the kind of thing which the benefits are intangible, you would say. It does something for the country and for the region, but it's really not a bread and butter issue. It's not something you're gonna hear people talking about on the talk shows or getting excited about in the barbershop. But it's a big thing. It is a big thing.
The question is, it's a big thing, and apparently the costs to get there are huge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Prime Minister, I just read it before we came on, gave an address to the nation. Nowhere in that address have we been told anything about how our place was paid for. That is what I have a problem with.
How was it paid for?
Nobody knows. We could guess, but we are not told. And why this became obvious is Estonia said that the $85 million they were talking about, Turkey had to throw, I forget how much $1 million at trying to get it. Canada is presently working on it, and they have appointed 10 diplomats at $1 million per year salary. And this is just their start. Who else made the point? Some other country was making the point on how much money they spend. And it's a lot of money.
What was this money spent on? What was the
I
money
don't know.
used for?
I guess the campaigning and all the rest of it, but that's what they say they threw at it. That's what they say they threw at it. So I'm saying, nobody's saying to St. Vincent because saying, oh, you're small, we're going to give you a seat on the Security Council because you're small. It didn't work so. So who paid for us?
So when Baroness Scotland raised money to pay for her position as Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat, you're saying there's an equivalence to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we would not have known if Estonia hadn't spoken up and said, listen, this thing was costing us, I think, was 30-something million euros and 4 million euros per year for the 2 years they're going to be there, they have to pay for. Somebody needs to tell St. Vincent, because there has never been a line item in the budget of St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the last 10 years that has any relationship to this venture. Just last week, Friday, we suddenly heard that we were there. Nobody has told us how we got there. And people seem to take objection umbrage to the fact that you asked that question.
That's really fascinating, because I've been raising questions here about what is the significance of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the Security Council of the UN for the rest of us, as well as, of course, for St. Vincent. But what is the importance of it? What's the potential implication, the impact? What can we even project? Can we surmise? What's likely to happen that will make a difference?
I'm not so sure about this difference thing. It's a prestige that, especially getting there first, is prestige. But secondly, you have to remember the 5 permanent members, and then the other 10 members rotate. Now, there's always been call for the structure to change.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that St. Vincent's been touting, that St. Vincent will lead the change of the structure. Now, China and Russia are in that mix. If they could get the support of more members of the non-permanent members, they can bring resolutions to the floor.
Yeah.
But the reality is also that the resolution to the floor can be vetoed by the 5 permanent members.
True, by any one of them.
So you ask yourself the question, where they're supposed to go. How do you get around this? Unless you take away some of the power from the 5 permanent members.
And right now, nobody can.
None of them, none of them gonna give it up.
None of them give it up. None.
And they ain't sharing it with nobody. I mean,
Thank you.
I don't know, people.
What would make a difference actually is if St. Vincent is able to articulate on behalf of this region. Because generally in our UN Security Council region, nobody speaks for the Caribbean. Nobody looks after our interests. Nobody looks on the impact of a war in Iraq or Iran on our region. We get lost in the tirade. So
well, I guess the issue here can be Venezuela in particular for our region. But then you have to remember that they're not taking office until 2020.
Until
what happens
January.
between?
That's just a few months down the road.
I agree, but still, a lot could happen in between here.
A lot could happen, you see. And here again, the Caribbean in general and CARICOM in particular does not have a united position on Venezuela. So when St. Vincent at the UN Security Council speaks about Venezuela, they're going to be speaking for St. Vincent and those that agree with St. Vincent's position. And we all know and have clearly seen that the countries of the Caribbean are not united there. So to what extent St. Vincent can use its position to put forward any argument according to how it supports Venezuela and to get any success at that level, that remains to be seen. But we know for sure that Venezuela will become a hotbed over that 2-year period when St. Vincent is there. But personally, based on what has happened with the whole Venezuela situation, I expect to see St. Vincent fostering its position rather than trying to take a regional approach to see the impact of Venezuela on the entire region and not just the impact on St. Vincent.
Well, we already see what has happened at the level of the OAS with CARICOM and the various positions at that level. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all pans out at the end of the day.
But there's no common position at the OAS.
No. Yeah. Neither OAS, neither CARICOM, nowhere is there a common position.
I think the litmus test for that Security Council situation will come around 2 major issues. They are global issues, but they are global issues which will have massive impact on our region. One of them is climate change. And the other one is a question of energy. Because if there is a war in the Middle East and the price of oil begins to go through the roof, let's say it gets to $100, $200 a barrel, etc., what is going to be our position? The big five would have already taken care of themselves. They're already extending pipelines from each other for natural gas from Russia, etc., etc. So they have their contingency plans in place. What would be our contingency plans? And is it that it's just that we're going to have somebody sitting there who, if they have the balls, will come out of the room and tell us, hey guys, look what's going to happen? Or will they feel so indebted to the Security Council protocols that they will not even tell us what's going to happen? And so we will be none the wiser, even if we have a colleague sitting at the table. But it is climate change and, if you will, the Third World War with the implications for energy and the movement of prices and so on. And I'm wondering if there would be even some sort of a forum, some sort of a process that would make use of either the OACS or CARICOM or whatnot, or even, let's say, CARIFORUM, to shape and establish a 2-point agenda that would guide the behavior of St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the Security Council. Now, I know that's asking a lot because nobody guides Ralph Gonsalves. I understand that. I understand that.
No, but you see, having said that, is that we in the region,
that is the case.
We in the region never knew we were going in for this thing. We never were told what it meant. To say so posthumously now is what's the point? And then my biggest question is this: who funded us? Because we have to look out for their interests too.
Somebody paid the bill.
The people who pay the bill, does our regions need? Is it subsumed by these people's payment? These are some of the questions that nobody is answering. Because if they paid for a particular reason, all right, and obviously they want their thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you foresee a time or a moment where this diplomacy by threat that Trump is making his kind of his brand would be used against us if we don't play ball with the United States at the Security Council? Do you see? Do you see that?
Interesting enough, just last week before the announcement was made, an American diplomat said to the Prime Minister in some function they had, and I'm quite sure what it was. Oh, he hopes that his democracy can get beyond Venezuela, or can include Venezuela, something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that statement, I was actually kind of amused. Now, remember you mentioned oil a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
America is now self-sufficient in oil.
Mm-hmm.
The interest for oil for America is not as great. They can put the cat among the pigeons for the rest of the world out there for oil.
And you can call the shots on natural gas too.
That's the point.
Yeah, fracking and all that kind of stuff, you know. So it really, so I don't know. It's again like throwing the pigeons among the cats, or the cats among the pigeons. I don't know which one it is. What is the significance of this? Or is this a non-event?
It is. In my opinion, it is. Because we never normally pay attention to what's happening at the UN Security Council. You know, they take a vote on something and it's neither here nor there with the rest of us. Life goes on, it's business as usual. It doesn't change the course of the war. It doesn't really change anything. So it really is a non-event. But I tell you what was one of my major areas of concern about it, and about a lot of things that are happening in our islands and our territories these days. St. Vincent goes, gets money from wherever, funds its campaign, gets the seat on the Security Council as St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but come back to the country and have a party celebration about it. You know?
A party celebration, absolutely.
A party celebration.
Really?
A party, yes.
Red flags. The color of the Prime Minister's party is red, and his red flags waving, government ministers.
I haven't seen one Vincentian flag in all of the motorcade.
They have a party motorcade around the country, which I absolutely looking on found so distasteful.
This is distasteful.
You know, you go, how does this become a party event?
Yeah.
And this is always my argument and my fear, and what I do not like about political parties, because they are taking over our countries. And you see it with this UN Security Council seat. It's said to be, I heard one, I don't know the name of the gentleman, but he was right there with the Prime Minister on his mobile phone motorcade. And he said it's the biggest thing that has ever happened for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So why is it a party celebration in red shirts with red flags?
You know who was saying that? You know who was saying that?
Who?
No, Beverley, I asked you know who she was saying that. You know whose voice
No,
that
I don't know him. All I know.
Camilo's voice.
No, it wasn't Camilo. I was looking
but he said that.
Camilo may have said it, but the person I was looking at, he was in his red shirt, he was holding the microphone, he was standing right there beside the Prime Minister's mobile phone, and
this was a person on the truck?
Yeah. You know, and he was saying the biggest thing that ever happened. Come out and celebrate with the Prime Minister, but he wasn't out as the Prime Minister, he was out as the leader of the ULP. He was out as the leader of his political party.
Absolutely.
So, and it's this worrying trend that I see. You're having party meetings to discuss government issues. You're having party meetings to talk about what's going to happen with government programs. You're having party meetings to make announcements about things that are government national issues. And it is a worrying trend. I see it in Grenada, I see it in St. Vincent, I see it in, don't bother with Dominica because it's your political leader.
We in another
You're in another element. You're in a class by yourself. You know, I see it in Barbados with this new Myanmar administration. Why are these people holding party meetings in party colors and then talking about national issues and things that are supposed to be handled by the government, not a political party?
Because in many instances, one equals the other. That is how the masses, I hear you, the masses are made to feel that one is equal to the other.
One and the same thing.
Yes.
And the masses are made to understand that it's not one and the same. And that is why these people keep going behind elected officials, begging for jobs, begging for galvanize, begging for this, begging for that, because they do not understand that a political party is not the government of the country. It's not.
So how can somebody, I mean, it's a rhetorical question, say that this is the biggest thing to happen in St. Vincent, when without the biggest thing that did in fact happen in St. Vincent, there would be no St. Vincent. Your independence.
Attila alone, and not here.
You know, we are fascinating. Maybe we should just turn these islands into a string of comedic locations. Yeah, that should be our new brand, and let's market ourselves that way. You want to laugh at yourself, you want to laugh at us, come.
Yeah, but you have other organizations that take the Caribbean brand and seriously market it and making money from it. Meanwhile, we still doing puppy show.
Yeah.
You know? But this whole politicizing of every single thing that has to do with the government, it's very, very worrying.
Yeah.
Extremely worrying.
Absolutely.
And that for me in St. Vincent is what took the edge of the ascension to the UN Security Council. It really took the edge off. And but it was noteworthy though that during the motorcade, there weren't any people along the streets. The motorcade just, although the Prime Minister declared a public holiday to celebrate the victory.
Oh, really? All of that happened in St. Vincent?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just haven't followed.
Yes, they had a public holiday.
They had a public holiday.
Extension too.
And in those 3 days, the Prime Minister went around the island on this trailer. On this couch.
Mobile phone.
Right. Him sitting on the back of this trailer in this chair and went around the island. But I can tell you one thing. We can't be very happy about the reaction of that because I think the holiday was given so that there was going to be all of this fanfare. There's none of it.
Okay.
And then they stopped in the villages. You probably see a dozen people come out.
That's it.
And I'm like, so where's the celebration and who is it for? I think if he had come back and organized a national event, he would have had better attendance because the opposition has sent out its congratulations and willing received as the opposition in Grenada has issued congratulations. George, did anything come from the Prime Minister's office? Any congratulations from the Prime Minister's office for St. Vincent?
No.
Haven't
Not
seen
that I've
anything
seen.
myself.
No release.
No, I haven't seen anything either. You know, but CARICOM has issued its congratulations and other people have chimed in. So if you came home, had a national event, read these messages, share the congratulations and tell the people where the money come from to get the country there.
Yeah.
It
We
would
should
have
know.
been better than going around with red flags flying and government ministers in red shirts and trying to get people to come out to come jump up around a mobile phone and a political motorcade. Eh?
Those whom the gods destroy, they first make mad. And they are one by one being made mad. just a little more patience, people. A little more.
Look, we mental health is a serious issue, you know, and we are unable to deal with it as is. You see, so I hope when the famous are made mad, their families will fly them out as they are used to and don't burden the country with trying to care for them when they're in that state. That is what I hope. Now, we touched on it a little bit earlier when we mentioned the Petrocaribe. We do have the Petrocaribe uprising in Haiti as one of the issues which we said we'd get to on the menu if we had the time. Because what is happening in Haiti is also a result of that Petrocaribe scheme, which just went awry. Jerry, you want to speak to that issue?
To the Haiti issue?
Yeah.
Oh, the Haiti issue, I'm going to make a broader statement on all this. I think this Petrocaribe thing, when the history of this region is written, it's going to be seen to have been one of the worst things to have happened. Now, Marky, I think the intent of President Chavez was right, except that at the same time he was given it for good reason. He left the door open for a lot of the nefarious activities that has taken place around it. When you see the kind of money that was supposed to have been passed through Haiti, and none of it did, and now that they're doing the audit, 2 companies bid for the same piece of road, and both were paid, and the road ain't done. And one of the companies, the president is involved in that company. So there was all of this a couple of weeks ago. They're saying the newest report, I forget how thick it is, 500 pages, further implicates the president and shows that he got paid millions of dollars. I see a report this evening, him saying that he's not corrupt, his hands are clean, and all the rest of it. And I'm saying, but so did the auditors make up what they saw? The trouble is, we have on one hand the way European Union gives money. They're very stringent. You have to pass all kind of rules. You have to do this, you have to do that. And in many instances, sometimes in our countries, people don't follow through because they say they're just asking too much. So they are very strict when they give you money. You have to report it. In St. Vincent a couple of years ago, the Prime Minister thought he was smart and decided to take VAT out of some monies that the European Union had given to us. The next time they came down, when they found out, they ordered the VAT to be repaid or no more funding from the European Union. They're very strict. Yeah. On the other hand, Patty? No, I thought you were saying something, yeah.
No, I have some comments, but I would like you to finish, please.
Okay, on the other hand, you have what happened with Chavez. You have what is happening with China, that they give you all of this money without any real framework for accountability. Now, in the case of Venezuela, people put money into separate accounts, and the monies were used for all kinds of things. And it is clear it was left, the money was given for the support of Venezuela. So the countries would support Venezuela. So Chavez and these guys didn't care what happened to the money, as long as you were loyal to them. They recognized that there was no accountability, and they were loyal to the money, which is the situation that Haiti is finding itself in. The only thing I see that is different in Haiti, it seems that the monies were passed through the consolidated fund. Hence, the Auditor General could track it. And that's why they know what went on. In these islands, they can't find it. They cannot find it.
But you know, there's this myth that is being promulgated about the freeness of the Petrocaribe money, and by extension, the freeness of the Chinese money. Mm-hmm. Neither was free, and you've quite correctly pointed out what was the quid pro quo was that you had to, in fact, give support. You had to support the position, regardless of what went on in country. You had to be supportive of the Venezuela position. Interestingly, we had the same situation with Japan and the whaling issue. Japan didn't really care what you did with the money. All they didn't care. Was to go to the International Whaling Commission meeting and vote in support of Japan. That's it. The Americans have done that for decades. The British have done it. It is the European Union that broke that mold. Yep. Because they introduced a set of, if you will, more objective, more standalone kind of guidelines and principles. But when I read again that Ron Saunders article, trying to make it look like China and by extension Russia and these kind of countries, they are the ones giving us the free money. When in fact, the 20+ year loan that he's touting that China gives us at 2% and being the big thing, that there are facilities available from the European Union that are on much better terms than that. It's just that our governments have not gone after that money because, as you said, they have to give account. The European Investment Bank itself has monies that for on-lending for private sector investment and growth at 1%. And our private sector has not been encouraged to go after that. The governments have to kind of give a kind of a blanket, we want to see our private sector move in this direction, tourism, shipping, manufacturing, and so on. And these monies become available. But if you talk with the people at the European Delegation Office in Barbados, in our case, you will see that all that money from Cotonou over 30 years ago, from Lomé to Cotonou, we have used a fraction of that money.
Absolutely right.
You understand? And so and people like Saunders, people like Ralph, people know that. They know that the international community has found ways to work with tiny communities. It is the European Union that first coined that phrase of the special needs of small island states, which later on the United Nations adopted in its small island developing states lingo. But we never took advantage of it because we were not disciplined enough.
That's the problem.
And so that allowed us to sort of let just the government, the public sector, was getting EDF grants and EDF loans and so forth, and nobody else was getting. But there was money for NGOs, there was money for private sector, and a separate set of money for the public sector. My friends, that is a crime. I don't know where the court is on this earth, this planet, that will one day bring all these rascals in front of some people on some bench that will be in a position to say, not for cutting off somebody's neck, not for busting a head, but for denying your people an opportunity to meet their legitimate development and social needs. We condemn you to 7 lifetimes of prison. So you'll never ever get out. You know, I mean, I'm serious that unless that kind of hammer is held over the heads of our leadership, given the current mindset, we are not going to break away from this. Somebody's always going to come, as China has, and be able to buy you out.
Yep.
And it seems to me that really, you know, and that's where our judiciary has failed us. That's where the Hugh Wooding Law School has failed us. That's where the University of the West Indies has failed us. That's where the institutions we set up to give us a chance to stand on our own 2 feet in a world that is not really friendly to us, those institutions failed us. And it is the people who run those institutions who still end up creating those layers of leaders who continue to perpetuate that mess. And so, I mean, we have to find another way. And that other way begins right here.
When you talk about the judiciary, it's not an accident why the judiciary is underfunded and under-resourced. It's deliberately kept that way so that it cannot function. Because I believe there are lawyers and judges who would be doing a different type of work if there was an independent judiciary that could function as it should. But
that separation of powers is not in our mix.
Without the separation of powers and with the judiciary dependent on the executive for financing and for a place to call home, for everything,
and
for resourcing.
To the bench, to the CCA, to the wherever.
You know, and I believe they are deliberately kept in need and kept miserable so that they cannot function. Because when they need the judiciary to do something for them, it has to happen. But otherwise, it's just...
That is what, one of the things that in terms of even this money, these countries can say to us who are asking for reparation, but you had all this money to give all you.
Absolutely.
You never showed that you needed it. I've always said that.
And the
I know a couple of years ago when 16 million euros went back from Sindens because we didn't do our homework.
The biggest mistake we could make is to put any reparations money in the hands of those new slave masters. Those box slaves.
Leave the reparation
mistake.
Because
what they did to Petrocaribe is what they would do with the reparations.
Yes, the reparations money need to stay right where it is until we have a proper system that works.
To manage it.
So leave it right where it is for now.
Okay, what is it?
But that is my final word on this thing, you know, until and unless those in positions of leadership and authority are brought to book and held accountable for their acts of corruption, it's not going to stop. We're not going to get a handle on it. As long as they continue to get away with it, they will continue to be corrupt. We really need to start calling in some of our Caribbean leaders and bringing them before some court, some tribunal. If not a court, a tribunal.
I agree.
And let them give account.
Let them answer.
Let them give account.
And let them see on that tribunal some of the same faces of the people whose lives they messed up.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Let them give account of their deeds.
And now we're out of time, guys. We're out of time. We have 1 minute to go.
Sorry.
No, that's so sorry, but it's the excitement of this program. But once again, folks, thank you for joining us for this edition of Mek We Chat. The usual suspects are here tonight. As usual, we start all this stuff to give you a chance to participate and to think them through. George, thanks again for holding forth for us. and to make sure that everything works technically. I'm Jerry George, on behalf of all of the suspects, so long. Until next week, God willing.